And hello, everybody. Welcome along. Cricket Badger podcast time once again as we pick the bones out of the third test match in Rawalpindi. First of all, congratulations to Pakistan. We'll start with that. Congratulations to Pakistan. Fantastic performance from them. And we will talk about England and all of their travails as well as we go through the podcast. Please stay joined, as always, by Lucas down the bottom of the screen today. Lucas has been playing cricket today, has just got himself out of an ice bath, looks all red in the face, and fighting fit and raring to go, Lucas, aren't you?
Yeah, banged up and bruised, but ready to go.
And pleased to welcome back to the pod, Azeem Rafiq. Azeem, former player. Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you, buddy. How's things?
All good, all good. And we have got a lot to talk about today, and we'll start it off as we always should do, because after a fiercely fought series, it's always good to shake hands and say well played to the opposition. Well played to Pakistan, to Shan Masood, Jason Gillespie, and to all of the team for Pakistan. And Azeem, we'll start with you on this, because obviously you've got big connections with Pakistan, having been born there. After losing the first test match, as they did do, falling apart at the end of that test, and a lot of repercussions and a lot of chat off the back of that test match, to then obviously reuse the wicket in Multan, then go to Rawalpindi and dig that up basically to make sure it turned. Fantastic performance by Shan and his team.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a tough time since the Asia Cup, just before the 50 over World Cup. Pakistan cricket has a new law every time they've stepped out onto the pitch. It's been chaotic off the pitch, and nothing changes there. After the first test match, the PCB decided a new selection committee was brought in as Shan Masood was doing his post-match interview. And yeah, they pressed the gamble button, and it's paid off, and it's paid off really well. Look, I think a couple of things as well. Across the two test matches, I think there's been a lot of chat about pitches, including yourself, James, after the first session in this test match. Actually, I think, for the first time, Pakistan has tried to, put England out of their comfort zone over the last two series, and then played some really, really good cricket under pressure. And England have been found wanting. They've been found out of plans, really challenging for some individuals moving forward, whether they have the right skill to be able to play in spinning conditions. But look, all credit to the players, Sajid and Noman specifically. I think they've been a breath of fresh air. Sajid literally bled for the country yesterday. But yeah, a lot of performances under pressure by everyone, and it's been, you can see Pakistani people getting carried away. But actually, you know what? It's fine, because it's been a tough couple of years from a cricket point of view and for the country. So an incredible win, and one that I'm sure everyone will be really happy with.
Just another follow up on that. After the second test, which they just won, a lot of people on my Twitter feed were saying Shan Masood's not the right person to be captain. Jason Gillespie, what's he doing? Picking up bottles. He should be coaching the team and all this kind of stuff. And then after today, they're all, "Oh, Shan, brave performance, fantastic, mate," and all this kind of stuff. It's fans can be fickle things, can't they, at times?
Yeah, look, to be honest, it's a bit. It must be a little bit uncomfortable for both of them, because it's not the direction that they picked; it's the direction that was picked for them. Taken out of their hands. And I think Jason specifically has been quite open, and we both know him. And that interviews that he's done during the test match and just before is very unlike him. So it's clearly something that was chosen for them. In the end, whenever you win, everything else gets forgotten. And look, Shan has had a tough start to his test captaincy. Sorry about the noise in the background. I don't know if you can hear it.
Only a little bit.
He's had a tough start to his captaincy. But, these two wins will help him moving forward. Tougher challenges ahead, no doubt. Different challenges ahead. But it's just been nice to see what I've grown up watching Pakistan cricket is street smart, gutsy, putting their body on the line, different in the way they go about their cricket. And that's all been missing for such a long time. To see that, over the last two test matches. And there's been a lot of skill. I think people underestimate the skill of Sajid and Noman specifically. You know, the changes of pace, the subtleness. You know, Sajid talked about how he watched the first Test match and watched Harry Brook play off the back foot, and he set his plans accordingly. I think people forget in the second Test match, England were in a very good position. And then Sajid actually started bowling a little bit slower and wider when Joe Root came in. And then once they got England, they've not let them breathe. But even in this Test match, you know, the change of plans, it's felt like they've known what the England batters will do 3 or 4 balls before they're going to do it. And as off spinners, finger spinners, you have to have that ability to be able to read the game. And they've done that, and they've just not let England breathe. And also, I think on the England side, I think they've let the pitch get into their heads. I don't think there's been enough conversation about England didn't play a third spinner in Multan. That's a mistake. And I'm not sure this Test match they got the team right either, because there's a lot of, you know, that kept low, and England's seamers, Potts, I know Carson's got a little bit of injury, banging the ball in would have still troubled these Pakistani batters. So I think there's a lot of questions for England moving forward. The one thing they don't have to do is play in the subcontinent for another 2 years, but that shouldn't hide away from, you know, I think there is some serious questions of some of the batting lineup specifically.
Lucas, we've been talking on this pod about Pakistan playing to their strengths. You know, indeed, any home country playing to their strengths. I think every, as an away side, you should be tested in the conditions that country offers. And Pakistan for too long have just created roads and just hope for the best. And roads suit England, don't they? Because, I mean, the term flat track bully has been bandied around with England, but it's true. And it's, you know, in Test matches when it's a flat track, they'll go out and buzz ball it, score 700 and win. When England were doing well in the white ball stuff, it was flat track bullies. It was kind of 400 in a day at Trent Bridge, and the like, trying to just rack up as many sixes as possible. What England haven't been very good at is when it's a tough challenge, when it's been a case of like grit your teeth and really try and see it through this session to preserve your chances in this Test match. That's when England fall apart. And, you know, I think Brendan McCullum after today said he's surprised it's taken Pakistan this long to actually test England in spinning conditions. But nothing wrong, I don't think, with serving up the pitches they've given England in the last 2 tests.
No, it's not. There's nothing wrong with that at all in general. India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh make minefields or ranked owners, however you want to call it. New Zealand have green tops. Incidentally, England will be going to New Zealand on those green tops. So that's a different challenge within itself. So they've got to turn around that quickly. Australia came out and said that they want green tops for India. Domestically, they're producing green tops. So there's really nothing wrong with your own identity. And yes, it's taken Pakistan a lot of years. I think this is their first Test win in Pakistan since South Africa, I think 3 years ago. So it's taken them a long time. I like how they use these kind of pitches because they have world-class spinners. Sajid Khan's a world-class spinner. He was fantastic in this Test match. He was fantastic in the last Test match. And England, as you mentioned, James, when it does get tough, they capitulate. There's a huge weakness there. And you look at it as the bigger picture and think, before we had Stokes and McCallum, we had Silverwood and Root. Is that any better than what it is now? After this series, you're questioning that. In my opinion, no, because they went to they went to Pakistan last time. They won that series. Okay, that's good. And now they've been found out. They've been found out in the spin department. That, again, no disrespect to Jack Leach, Rehan, and Bashir. No disrespect to them, but they are not that kind of bowlers yet. Especially, but I think Bashir's got huge talent in my opinion. I think Rehan has got talent and upcoming, in my opinion. But they're not Sajid Khan. I think he's a very good spinner in his conditions. So there is a weakness. They have to identify that. Now, if they lose to New Zealand, what do we say then? Do we say, well, gee, do we have to do something dramatically for the Ashes? So it's a very tough. It's a tough. Personally, I couldn't care less, James, if you capitulate or not from an Australian point of view. It's good that you do, but by all means, lose every game. But it's something that you boys have to turn around because they like I said, they've got New Zealand. We know what pitches they play. So a completely different challenge.
I sent you some questions prior to this, and I'm going to go out of order with these because I think we'll go on to the spinners because obviously Azeem, former off spinner, and the question was, why can't England spinners compete with Noman and Sajid? I mean, two very different spinners, Azeem, as well. Slow left arm, Noman, really nice flight, kind of dragging the batter forward, hitting his lengths and kind of making it hard for the batter to work out whether to go back or come forward. Sajid, as you mentioned, a bit more aggressive really as a spinner, but changing his pace. He can bowl quite quickly, but he also then takes 15 miles an hour off it with the next one, and the batter's not quite sure how to play. Really using their experience. I mean, Naman's 38, 39, but he looks about 58. Sajid's, I mean, he's become a bit of a hit, I think, amongst England fans as well, because he's got that little moustache that twirls up. You can see him being a kind of like a Bond villain, and he's got that stare where he kind of stares at batters and he looks quite evil. But then in the next moment, he's got a massive smile on his face. He looks like your best mate. He's a character, Sajid, and the game needs characters. But those two have shown real skill, Azeem, through the last two tests.
Yeah, they have. And, you know, you talk about, I think Lucas talked about the pitch and Pakistan finally get into some sort of home advantage. I think people, because there was no test cricket or international cricket in Pakistan for such a long time, actually forget Pakistan used to have flat pitches. They didn't have spinning pitches. The success Pakistan had at home has been around pace, reverse swing, X-factor bowlers, and then wrist spinners, leg spinners, Danish Canaria, Mushtaq Ahmed. So Pakistani pitches are different to an India, a Bangladesh, and a Sri Lanka. They always have been. The only thing that's changed is we don't produce the bowlers in that same way. Don't have that type of bowlers. So that's why the pitches have looked even flatter, because, you know, just not got them type of bowlers. In terms of these two, you know, they've got a lot, especially in Noman, played a lot of domestic cricket. They understand their action. They understand the type of bowler they are, but also the reading of the pitch. You know, I honestly, second test match, I think it was 220 for 2, England were, and Pakistan were rattled. There was a boundary, you know, they were scoring a good pace, and it was Sajid who, when Root came in, just went a slower and wider, and then for the first time, and I think I spoke to you over message, James, at the time, I said it to you, Root was not as busy as he normally is. And that's what let them come into the game initially. And once they came into the game, they read the pitch and the skill level. Honestly, as an off spinners, they're both off spinners, but especially the right arm off spinner, you have to have something more than just the bowling for you, because, you know, the game is really difficult as a right arm off spinner. And this bloke had everything. He had character. You know, we talk about imposing yourself. We're not fast bowlers. We can't bowl bouncers. So you have to impose yourself, you know, in the game in some manner, whether that's through your body.
Tell that to Rooty. He got a wicket with a bouncer the other day.
Well, yeah, unless you're Rooty. So, you know, you impose yourself and your character onto the game, and he did that in abundance, but he backed that up with the skill. And the subtle changes of pace, the subtle changes of wrist position, the subtle changes of line and where he delivered from just confused England. And I think from a Noman Ali, again, you know, I think 11 kilometers an hour on average, Pakistani spinners bowl slower than the England ones. And, you know, I'll go to answering your question. So these two are awesome. But I don't think, again, enough is spoken about how poor Leach and Bashir was in that first innings in Multan, specifically.
You sent me an old article where Shane Warne had said about Monty. You know, he's played X amount of test matches, but he's basically played the same test match again and again and again because he bowls the same ball every single time. And you could say that about Jack Leach. I mean, he's obviously, he's got talent. He knows what he's doing with that ball, but there's no variation there. He's not kind of like giving some flight, then the next one kind of speeding it through, trying to change things up to make the batsman guess what they're going to have to compete with. The batter knows exactly what's coming next, don't they?
Yeah, and look, I sent that to you yesterday, and Nasser Hussain talked about in the post-match review, talked about, you know, just ramming in there. He's played the same test 30 times, is what the late Shane Warne said, and then he called him one-dimensional, and he said it's not is how the ball gets there, and that is Jack Leach. That second Test match at Multan, that first innings, he just got quicker and quicker and quicker, and now you watch. Okay, that's the first innings. They bowled before Sajid and Noman, but then watching Sajid and Noman go about their business and tell everyone. Sajid told everyone on the press conference that evening, and yet Leach's inability. I'm talking about Leach first because he's the experienced one. Leach's inability to be able to bowl slower and hold length, but to do that there and then to come here and then bowl second and still not learn from them two. No subcontinent Test match in 2 years. Bashir is the first choice clearly in England's eyes. I think we might have seen the last of Jack Leach in an England shirt. I looked at the stats before I came on. They're not too dissimilar to Monty. And I think, 38 Test matches, they're just the inability to bowl slower or think on the feet. Because I think even in this time yesterday, the game was in the balance, right? The game was really in the balance. And again, I think the inability to read the game. Saud Shakeel played immensely well. But when Leach tried to go slower and wider, Saud Shakeel reverse swept. And he reverse swept because that is not a line and pace he wanted Leach to continue bowling. But as soon as he reverse swept him twice, Leach reverted back to fast, straight. And, that inability to think on the feet, there's question marks of him, but also England has a full-time spin bowling coach in Jeetan Patel. That's a Leach. Bashir, completely different. I think, look, very early on in his career, hardly played any cricket. England have taken a big gamble, and they're going to have to face up to days like this and matches like this because it's them who have put him in that position. They've got to stick by him.
I think with Bashir and Rian, it's about getting experience into them, isn't it? And they should, if they've got anything about them, they should go home now and think about how it went, what they could do better, what they maybe need to learn to improve for next time, whether that's in 2 years or whenever they play in those conditions again. But how do you see it, Lucas? Because you've got 3 spinners there that England have used in that third Test. 2 very young, 2 have got potentially a huge future ahead of them. But would you be quivering in your boots? There's a question coming up about, do we talk too much about the Ashes? But when we come to the Ashes, would you be quivering in your boots if Jack Leach is taking on Nathan Lyon in the spin department?
If it was Nathan Lyon versus Jack Leach, I would have absolutely nothing to fear about. As a bowler, whether you're a spin bowler, whether you're a pace bowler, Azeem can back this up, you look for as many ways as possible to get a batsman out. Now, let's say you're on a flat deck. Okay, you got no swing. What can you do? We can do a lot of things. You can start with your Yorker. You can start with bowling bouncers. You can try all these different things. And I think Leach, I saw Leach on the first day he bowled a couple of full tosses. And NASA said that he's been trying to work on his flight. And I saw that to a little bit of a degree. But unfortunately, because he's basically guinea pigging in this Test match, because you have to do it somewhere. And he was just bowling full tosses and he was getting smashed down the ground. Azeem brought up a really good point that Pakistan, they didn't have it all their way in this Test match. England, on the second day, I thought England were probably going to win this game. I remember Pakistan needed 80, were trailing by 80 and they were 5 down. I thought, well, they're just going to get rolled here and England going to win. But for some reason, Leach, Rehan, and Bashir, they just tried too many same things. And if you're a batsman, you want to try to at least get as much of the same thing as possible to help you make runs. Now, if you're facing against a fast bowler, and he's trying to do something different like a Yorker, every over or something, or bounces, you have to as a batsman go back to a plan B. And I didn't feel one little bit in Shakeel's innings he went to a plan B. He tried, as Azeem said, he tried to reserve sweep. He didn't want to reserve sweep. But then Leach thought, well, he's getting runs there, so I'll go back to old ways. So I just don't think those 3 bowlers, mainly in particular Leach, I'm not trying to pick on Leach, but Leach was probably the worst offender that when he did try something, he went back to the same thing and leaked a lot of runs.
Pakistan, I think, at one stage, were about 177 for 7 or something like that, and looking like they were going to concede a first innings deficit, which, when they were going to have to bat last on that track, was potentially going to be, crucial, pivotal. And they went from that position. Saud Shakeel, as you say, batting, just using his head, wasn't he? Just batting really well in those conditions, showing England how to do it, basically. And then you got the two spinners that we've spoken about came in, and Noman, they kind of batted like they bowled, didn't they? Noman came in and played sensibly, and kept Saud Shakeel company. And then Sajid came in and basically just opened his shoulders and started smacking sixes, particularly off Bashir, to just knock him out of the attack, and went past England. And this, for me, it's the first time in this series that I've seen Ben Stokes maybe just losing it a little bit. I've been really impressed with Ben Stokes since he's become captain, because he's always seemed to have been in charge, trying to steer the game, being proactive and getting ahead of it. In this test, and in the last one where he lost it a little bit visibly on the park, he let Pakistan get away, Lucas, I felt, in that first innings, and kind of lost the momentum in the game as far as England were concerned, and almost sat back and allowed Pakistan to get past them. Did you see the same thing?
We've seen that before with Ben Stokes in the English Ashes, where Lyon and Cummins were batting. He lost the plot a little bit there.
Well, England have always been bad about getting the tail out, haven't they? They've always let the tail wag, basically.
So it when it's going their way, they look $1 million. That's fine. And most teams are like that. When it's going their way, they could beat anybody. But no, we mentioned on the second test, so the first test match, that Pakistan's attitude was very poor in that test match. It's almost like that's been reversed. It was England's attitude that was very poor in the last two tests compared to Pakistan's. So I think, and like I said, we saw that in the Ashes. So when the going gets tough, you can't capitulate. I understand you're not going to have it all your way, but there's got to be some point where you got to think, okay, what can we do? And I just don't think England did that. I don't think England's Ben Stokes particularly. He's a bowler himself. He should know about all these different ways of getting out batsmen, all these different plans. He should know. He's a bowler. He does bowl. He's a world-class bowler as well on his day. I know he's been injured a lot, but still, he should still have that mindset. So I just think they just tried the same thing, and it just, because of that Bazball approach, there was nothing that said stop. Just stop and try something different for 5-10 minutes. Now, I get it. They persisted with the field, that umbrella field that worked in the first test, worked in the Ashes of Courage. I get that, but there was nothing. There wasn't nothing in this test match like that. There was nothing.
Did you feel, Azeem, that Ben Stokes maybe he's not quite as fit as he's let on? Because in tests gone by, in certain situations that we saw in this test match, he would have brought himself on. There's no doubt about it. He would have brought himself on and bowled for 15 overs to see if he could get something sorted out. Didn't bring himself on at all in this one. So for me, he's not quite as fit as maybe England have been letting on.
Yeah, I think that's. I haven't seen him. I mean, I watched the interview as well. I haven't seen him deflated and on the field, as I haven't seen a Ben Stokes team meander the way the team meandered yesterday when, still 70 runs, Pakistan was 70 runs behind, let the game drift. And then, frustration in the second test match. I don't think he's fit. But also, there's a couple of things. I don't know how they've gone into that second test match without a third spinner on a used test match pitch. And then here, I actually waver away from what everyone's saying in a little bit, in that I actually think they got tentative. I think that they weren't at their positive self. They got tentative so quickly from, a few blows to their methods. And all of a sudden, it felt like they didn't have a plan. It felt like they weren't quite sure. And I thought they weren't as aggressive with the ball. I didn't think they were as aggressive in the field or with the bat, because suddenly they thought, we can't sweep. No one used their feet until Jamie Smith. I think they got the pitch in their head too much. I don't think this pitch was that bad, personally. And I actually felt the seamers would have played a part as well.
Well, we had an argument on Twitter, didn't we, on day one, where I was saying this pitch isn't good. And the only thing with the pitch was, I've got no objection with the pitch turning on day one. That's fine. I felt the uneven bounce was an issue on day one, but it didn't seem to get any more.
It wasn't uneven. It just stayed low. It wasn't uneven. It went both ways.
That's what I mean. It was keeping low, wasn't it? And the one that got ducky, it was the prime example of that. But it didn't seem to get any worse. That didn't get any worse.
But that's the thing. Sometimes when pitches have been, you're trying to attempt to do stuff with pitches, the first morning can be the one where it suddenly does a little bit, and then it's look. I thought it was a very entertaining Test match. The second and third Test match were more entertaining than the first. And actually, I think I saw a clip before the Test match of all the England players looking at the pitch. Every conversation was about the pitch. In the press conference was like, oh, they've been raking there. And actually, you can work the pitch up in your head to be a minefield. And actually, it's not quite a minefield. And there were runs to be had. It was not a 5 down at lunch pitch. And, if you applied yourself, as Jamie Smith, Gus Atkinson showed, Saud Shakeel, you applied yourself. The thing with pitches like this is you need absolute clarity. If you're defending, you defend with clarity. If you're attacking, you attack with clarity. There are some shots that are more risky than others. But the one thing you can't do on these pitches is become a sitting duck. You can't become predictable. You can't you have to have scoring options. Shan Masood, for example, I thought that innings from Shan Masood was as poor as there was in the whole Test match because, there was no way of scoring and he kept trying to work the off spinner against the spin. And Rizwan came in, threw a few punches back, and all of a sudden, the bowlers lost their length. And that was the difference. You look at the Pakistani spinners, they kept their methods, they kept their plans, they stayed stronger on it. England, on the other side, whether bowling it or batting against it, just didn't look like they knew what they were doing. And actually, they looked gassed. They looked tired. They looked out of it.
In the first Test, England racked up 800 plus. And then in the next 4 innings of the series, they didn't score that many runs in the four knocks. And don't you think, Azeem, that they seem to be taking a steer from Ben Duckett at the top of the order? They kind of, maybe the criticism of England at times is that they don't have a plan B. Plan A was to sweep, wasn't it? Plan A was to sweep on those services and basically just sweep to victory. And then when Ben Duckett kind of came in and said, I can't sweep on that, and then they shelved the sweep, nobody knew what to do.
But that's my point, right? The extremes of not being able to go in and judge for yourself, work out a game plan, think on your feet, just simplify the game, having that clarity because everything is instructions. And you can get like this in environments where you've got such strong leaders, such strong figureheads, people can be very sort of sheep, and that's what I'm of the belief, and I'm not just saying this now, I don't think this England team is as good as they think they are, right? I think they try and mask.
We'll come on to that in a second. Yeah,
they try and mask everything.
That's it. I agree with him. I want more of those opinions, Azeem. I agree with that.
we'll come on to that after that. We're going to have a little break in a second. But the last question.
They try and mask everything. They try and mask everything with vibes and all the. Honestly, it's cringeworthy. They're sometimes cringeworthy to listen to. And actually, if that's how they speak internally, you can have this. When you have an environment where everyone's yes, you get into this bubble of thinking everything you're doing is like, and everyone else that disagrees with you is a problem. And I see with a lot of this England environment, I don't see the ability to be like. I saw an interview by Jeetan Patel talking about how Shoaib Bashir has got everything to be as good as Ashwin. I mean, I ask you the question, and I ask Luke, how helpful is that? Because when Ben Stokes started in the team, Ben Stokes said he's the best wicketkeeper in the world. 12 months later, he had to drop him. So the words and actions will never match up when you go talking some sort of extremes like that. I think it's so unhelpful to talk about Shoaib Bashir in leading up, because everyone reads everything. Right? Everyone reads everything, takes everything in. Suddenly, you have a couple of bad performances. He's got to play in New Zealand next, which won't be easy. He's got to then play against India in the summer. That won't be easy. And then he's got to go to Australia. And if that doesn't go well, you're looking for a new spinner. Yeah. And then 12 months ago, you said he had the ability to be as good as Bashir. And when it comes from coaches, it's so frustrating because it's like, come on. Full well it's a difficult enough game as it is. You need to inner confidence, and inner confidence is built through proper work, not words.
Where's that critical
I-
friend, or where's that critical voice in the dressing room? Because in any good environment, you need people to suddenly say, actually, I don't think that's the right choice, or I don't think that's the right thing to say, or what about this instead? But as Azeem just said, Lucas, it feels to me that it's kind of like club baseball. And if you are the person that sticks your hand up and says, actually, Ben, I don't agree with that, you're then seen as an issue, and you probably find yourself not playing next week. And that's not healthy, is it?
I completely agree with what Azeem said. We have our own problem with Cameron Green. Now, I don't know if Azeem knows much about Cameron Green, but
just to come in there, Lucas, before you carry on. Lucas has got this strange, perverse hatred of Cameron Green in the Australian side. You can't carry on now, Lucas.
Now, I'll tell you why. Because we pumped up this man. We've said that the media former players have said he's the best thing since Ricky Ponting. He's going to be the greatest all-rounder in the world. Hasn't lived up to it. That's why I don't like Cameron Green. I think Cameron Green in the Shield was unbelievable talent. Unbelievable. Now, we have another unbelievable talent, Sam Constas. I don't know if Azeem knows much about him, a young 19-year-old. We've now, instead of saying, well, he's the best since Ponting, we're saying the future's bright with this kid. So I agree. You have to be very careful with your wording when it comes to young players. Because if it doesn't work out, A, they get embarrassed because they've been hyped up on a pedestal, and B, you look embarrassed by saying that. So I don't get the obsession with saying to a young kid that's onto the scene, which Bashir is, which Cameron Green was, you're going to be the best since Ashwin, you're going to be the best since Ricky Ponting. That I think that's just ludicrous. That's just ridiculous saying that.
I can see that Azeem had his finger up there, but we're going to go to a short break first.
One
and
second,
then we'll come back we'll come back and we'll talk about England and how good they actually are, whether we should talk about the Ashes as much as we do. But first of all, thank you very much to manscaped.com for their continued support of the Cricket Badger podcast. I can't shut these two up today.
Forever you and me, right by my side, where you ought to be. Cause if I ever were to lose you, I just don't know what I'd do. Let me hear you now.
As always, thank you very much to manscaped.com. If you like what you see on manscaped.com, quote Badger and you'll get 20% off and you will get free shipping. Let's move on with the conversation. And the next question I was going to ask, which we kind of covered a little bit, but are England any good as a test team, or are they just entertaining? And which is more important? England are saving world cricket. England are saving world test cricket. But the only thing they've achieved really in the last 2 weeks is resuscitate Pakistan cricket, Azeem, really, isn't it? Which is, I suppose, it's saving global cricket, really. So it's success, isn't it? Hurrah.
The whole saving cricket chat is test cricket in England sells out, right? So they're not saving. Actually, we had a problem with spectators this summer. So actually, it's gone the other way. You know, if they were saving test cricket, they would have filled out the Rawalpindi stadium. They didn't do that. It's cringe. But sadly, I think England, this era, they're going to look back at this time with a lot of regret because actually they've got some very good players. They've got some players that have the ability and the potential to be world class. They've sort of hid behind and got a bit of this. You know, the whole baseball and the whole vibes carried away. And actually, test cricket predominantly, you know, has been, there's a real difference. There's 2 tiers in test cricket. And if you just put your head down and, play basic cricket well, you're going to be right up there. England's not been in contention to be in the World Test Championship final yet. So the reality is, they can say, oh, we ignore it. They wouldn't ignore it if they were up near the top. They're not that good. That's a simple thing of it. Entertaining. They've produced entertaining cricket at times. But you know what? I'll tell you why I think it's entertaining. Winning's entertaining. And there's nothing like winning. And you think in 10 years' time, people are going to talk about, oh yeah, that Test match, England, chased whatever in a day. But they'll always be, but they never won. They never got to a World Test Championship final. They never won an Ashes series. So I think, sadly, I feel like they're gonna, once they get out of their own hype and their own bubble, they'll look at it with a sense of regret in what they could have achieved, because there's some very, very good players.
Lucas, I mean, as an Australian, you'll be delighted to see England playing such entertaining cricket and being so good in terms of saving Test cricket. But the kind of next question, it's allied really, is that I'm interested to know from your perspective in Australia whether it's the same there, because every conversation we have around cricket in English cricket is geared around a 4-year cycle of the Ashes. It's kind of like, it doesn't matter if we lose in Pakistan. We're sending all these young kids off to a pace bowling camp in somewhere to kind of learn their trade for the next Ashes. This series is a good foundation for the next Ashes. It's kind of always tagged on in the conversation. This is all gearing up to the Ashes. And then what happens? We go down under, lose 5-0. We have an inquiry, an investigation, a new piece of research. We change the captain, we change the coach, and it all repeat to fade for the next 4 years again. In Australia, Lucas, is the conversation when you're debating cricket and when you're talking about the relative merits of a squad or a team or a youngster coming through in Constas, is the Ashes such a conversation, or is it about the next series being important?
For me, I don't care who we play. I want to win that series. I don't care if it's Bangladesh in bloody Antarctica. I want to win. I want to win no matter where I go.
In terms of your TV coverage, in terms of the way the papers are writing about
TV, no, if you said to an average person, who would you want to be more? Let's say England. Now the media, Pat Cummins has done a lot of recent interviews because the Sheffield Shield's going around. He's getting questions about the Ashes, and we're supposed to have India this Test match. Unfortunately, or incidentally, England and Australia is a pinnacle of Test cricket now. You can say Pakistan and India; they don't play for obvious reasons. But at this point in time, it is England and Australia. That's the oldest rivalry in Test match cricket. So,
but it's not the only thing that matters.
I get. It's not like West Indies, England was also another big series because of their history. I get all that, but if you're playing cricket as a kid, you want to wear the baggy green, or you want to play against England. That was my inspiration. I saw the 1997 Ashes as a young kid, and I thought I want to be there beating England. I want to be the Steve Wars. I want to be the Ricky Pontings, Shane Warnes. I inspired to be Shane Warne, and I turned out to be a pace bowler and a wicketkeeper, so that worked out well. But the Ashes is a big thing in this country, a huge thing. We get asked all about it, even 6 months after an Ashes series, we still say, oh, well, what are you going to do for the next Ashes series in England or in Australia, blah, blah, blah. So at the same time, I don't want to be disrespectful to all other nations that come here, but when a Sri Lanka comes here, when a South Africa comes here, we have the attitude of not the Australian players, but the media have the attitude of, oh, gee, I wish it was England or I wish it was India. They know what series they're going to get. They're going to get that excitement. They're going to get that history. They're going to get that rivalry. So it's a massive deal if you ask the media. But personally, for me, I want to win no matter who we play.
I had Ashley Giles on the podcast recently, and I talked to him a little bit about going through COVID. And one of the things that always annoys me a little bit when people are talking about this current Bazball team being entertaining and a joy to watch, and then comparing it to the Ashley Giles, Joe Root, Chris Silverwood kind of era, is that they had COVID to contend with, and that made a massive difference. They were literally saving Test cricket then because they were the only team playing everybody. West Indies came to England, obviously they saved it too, and everybody played their part, but Australia never travelled out of Australia, did they? I can't remember. Anyway, that's another story. But you mentioned Ashley Giles, Azeem, to me earlier on today about what he said when he was under threat or had just left his role after an Ashes cycle, and England were lurching to the next best thing. I mean, England, the comparison between Pakistan and England in terms of that is England lurch once every 4 years. Pakistan lurch once a week, don't they? But the but the thing with England is we'll go to Australia next time. It probably won't turn out very well, and then we'll probably Ben Stokes will say, "I've had enough." Brendan McCullum will move on, and then we'll go through it all again, won't we?
Yeah, I think as it stands, it's hard to see anything other than that. I mean, the one caveat I will throw at the biggest positive out of this series for me has been Bryden Cars. I mean, I knew he was good. I knew he was good, but I didn't realise he was that good.
Yeah.
And anyone that says otherwise is, I'm not having it. He was awesome. I was super, super impressed. So I think wrap him up, get him ready. Jofra, try and get him ready. Mark Wood. So you get a battery of fast bowlers. Gus Atkinson ready. So the fitness element will play a big part for that. I think, look, Zach Crawley's game is better suited for Australia. But I tell you, the difference, I think, again, and I think in the Ashes, it happened in the English Ashes, a lot gets spoken about. As soon as Lyon went missing out of that bowling attack in the Australian bowling attack, they looked rabbit in headlights. They looked out of sync, out of plan. Don't forget, most of them fast bowlers have only played their career with Nathan Lyon, being able to hold that end up when it gets tough, get the wicket, taking balls and stuff. So I think he'll play a big part in terms of, I just don't, as I said, I don't see England being able to compete out there. I really don't. And I think one of the main, I don't think it's the lack of ability. I actually think it's this chat and this pointless thing that they carry with them, which at times makes them unlikable as well. But before we get there, there's New Zealand now. This is not going to be easy. There's India at home. And, you're talking about the Ashes. I would say, arguably for me, India is right up there, if not better, in terms of series that go with it. I know the rivalry of the Ashes is obviously bigger. So there's a lot of cricket to be played before the Ashes, which is going to dictate how both teams arrive for the Ashes. I think England's got a lot of questions to answer. I just hope that they can take a step back out of that bubble, have some honest conversations, and start to just calm things around the whole chat and think of the cricket. And look, this game is very, very simple. It's complicated a lot. It's a simple game. You've got to score more runs than the opposition. Right? You've got to get 20 wickets. Everything else is, can be quite draining, to be honest. And whoever does that, simplifies that game, in that Ashes or before that, is gonna win. Simple as that. But I seriously worry for England for the next 12 months, especially with Brendan McCullum now taking over as white ball coach. He doesn't have that time in between to just put his feet up and watch Matthew Mott and the white ball team look clueless. He's got to make an impact in that. And if they go to the Champions Trophy and struggle, suddenly that pressure will snowball and build up quite quickly on them. So, I think it's going to be an interesting 12 months. And I think, I think I've spoken openly. I think some of the decisions Rob Key has made since he's come in will all get, they've sort of hid away from them by talking about, we're on this, we're on that. If the Ashes and India goes badly, what has the last 4 years achieved?
Absolutely. And as I say again, I just think it's every test win, every test cap, every run you score in a test match is important in its own right, regardless of who it's against. When you look back at your career, yes, they will talk about how many Ashes you've featured in and how successful you were in Ashes series. And it's obviously always a caveat against Joe Root's record, isn't it? That he's never scored a test century in Australia, but it's not the be all and end all. Runs against West Indies, runs against Sri Lanka, runs against everybody are important. And so are test wins against them. And I think this obsession, this one-eyed thing about always looking at the next Ashes series as the next focus rather than the next Test match, I don't think is particularly helpful.
To Azeem's credit, he said that the entertaining series is probably more England in India. He's probably right, because if you did predictions for the Ashes, there were a lot of people that might say 5-0. Now, if you say England and India next year, which will be a series,
put yourself down, Lucas. You'll get one test.
But people won't say 5-0 when India playing England. I don't think there'll be hardly anybody compared to when England come over here, because that's happened in the past twice, almost 3 times if it wasn't for rain in the Sydney Test. So I agree to extend that probably that is the most exciting series because the way England performs in Australia. Also, I agree. I've covered you with this about Nathan Lyon. He's our one bowler we can't replace. If Cummins goes down, if Hazelwood goes down, Stark goes down, we got Nisa, we got Boland. We got Lance Morris, who is waiting. Who I don't know how he hasn't received a Test match yet. Lance Morris. Now I'm not degrading Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood. They are world-class bowlers, some of the best bowlers in the history of the game. If Pat Cummins is concerned, but with Lyon, who are you going to bring in for Lyon? Todd Murphy. Now, with all due respect to Todd Murphy, he's nowhere near that level yet. So Nathan and I honestly believe if Nathan Lyon doesn't go down, we win that series comfortably. So he's crucial, and I think Nathan Lyon did say to an extent he wants to come back to England, so he'll still be around for a couple more years. But if Nathan Lyon, out of all our bowling bowlers, if Lyon went down, that'd be the worst possible result because we have no one to replace him. I completely agree with that.
I had the revelation the other day, Lucas, that I actually quite like Nathan Lyon, which you kind of, as an English kid growing up, you kind of like want Australia to lose everything. And you kind of dislike the Australians. But every Australian I've ever met in the game always seems to be a really nice bloke. But anyway, that's an aside.
He's a fantastic. We call him Gazzo down here because of a local football player. He's a fantastic guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him. Took a photo with him. A fantastic person. Unlike other people that I've met, they're quite loud and rowdy. Marnus Labuschagne for one. Also took a photo with me, good guy. But you don't want to. I don't know if you've been watching our Shield, Azeem. Just a little bit off topic, but he opened the bowling with his mediums in a Sheffield Shield match. That's how ridiculous. That's how ridiculous this man is getting now. He is getting absolutely out of hand. He's captaining Queensland. He's opening the bowling, for crying out loud, against my South Australia. The nerve of that. So I think he's absolutely out of control, man. Labuschagne. So you're more than welcome to take him, James. You can take him any day of the week.
There's a few keepers in the world game. Rizwan being one that you hear him on stump mic and he never shuts up, does he? Bang, 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 bang. Labuschagne's the worst. At short leg, if Labuschagne's in at short leg, you never hear anything else here on the TV coverage other than his gob firing off. The structure of English cricket. I mean, what is wrong? What is wrong with England? Why are they losing in Pakistan? Why is there a away record when they're actually tested away from home? Why do they struggle? And it's got to be how we train our players, hasn't it? How we structure English cricket. The fact, I mean, Jack Russell tweeted earlier, fully in agreement with this, when you devote an entire month, August, to a different competition and you're not playing championship cricket in that month, then when are the players going to get spinning conditions? That's the month where you'd think that spin would probably be at its most successful. So there's a whole reason, a whole set of things. And we won't get to talk about this properly until after the Ashes defeat down under, if that happens, because that's when we suddenly have a knee-jerk reaction and suddenly say, "Oh no, the 100's wrong. We'll have championship cricket in August instead, and we'll go down a different route."
Well, James, on that, right? That might have some relevance to it, but even for the 100, we've never gone to the subcontinent and performed, or won consistently, or produced players that are going to, become world-class players in them conditions. I think this whole thing, as well, like the whole 100 thing and the way it's affected the game, and the collateral damage, is something that I think it's going to cost us a lot down the line. But let's not blame that for not being able to play spin or not being able to bowl spin. It's not that. That is not the reason. And you can, you've had a fixture list is not the reason. We've had all sorts of different fixture lists. We've had all sorts of different competitions, played at different times. So to blame it on that would be wrong. In that will never be a solution. Having been involved in that system, having being coached in that system, being captained in that system, the reality is the way we coach spin is at the best inadequate. But the understanding of spin bowling is so far off the mark, But then you can do as much coaching and that as possible. Once you get onto the field, the captain is such a huge. You look at the successful spinners. and most of them will talk about that one captain that believed in them, right? And in English cricket, there's a lot of talk, but when it comes to action, there's not an understanding of spin bowling or belief in it, and also how to improve. Spin bowlers is a skill where you invest to reap the rewards later. In short-termism, that's not something that happens, right? So you can't accelerate, and I think it's talked about accelerating growth. You can help nudge spin bowlers in the right direction, but what you can't do is speed up and try and change them, because they're developing an art which takes time to rebuild. It takes time to build. So I think it's a lack of proper coaching and a lack of how to captain spin bowlers. And also what we do is, right, we do this a lot, the cycle. When they're young, they come in, they bowl a lot in age group cricket, in academy cricket, second 11 cricket, get to bowl a lot, so they're in good position. They get brought in, right? Then county cricket, the problem Rehan, I don't know where his career goes from here. You go to county cricket, you don't bowl, right? You don't bowl. Then you're supposed to grow. How are you going to grow when you don't bowl? So you've got this sort of cycle, and then when they get picked at 19, 20, later 22, 23, then you start seeing their negatives, and you drop them for the next 18, 19, 20-year-old, and you go through that cycle again. And every county does that over and over again. No one actually knows or has been able to get to the grips of how to develop a spinner over a period of time. We've had one world-class spin, well, two world-class spinners, Graham Swan and Adil Rashid.
With Rian took 13 championship wickets, but I think he bowled something like around about 170 overs. He bowled in this championship summer, and that's not enough. He wants to be bowling a lot more than that. But from Leicestershire's point of view, they want to be winning matches, because each of those 13 wickets went at 60. So came at 60. So he's not necessarily being their A-list spinner. So they want to win matches. They want to finish as high in the table as they possibly can, get promoted if they can. Rian's not doing that. But for England need Rian to play. So that doesn't kind of quite fathom. The other thing, when we were at Yorkshire, David Wainwright, who I've got a lot of time for, got runs with the bat, but also nice, tidy, slow left armer, was getting England calls for the age groups and the Lions and what have you. I can remember him going away one winter with England, came back a completely different bowler. They changed him, and he was not quite the same again. England don't seem to always recognise the good parts of a bowler, what's actually put them on the radar to start with, why they've actually picked them for the Lions or whichever team to start with. They then just take that bowler, change him into what they think a bowler should be, and that bowler sometimes comes back worse for that, Azeem.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's my point. Like, and you talk about Leicester and thing, right? If you understand spin, you understand leg spin, and you understand what you need to invest now to reap the rewards, you bowl him. You've got to bowl him, right? You can't say, oh, well, look at the stats at the end of the year and go, well, he's only got. That's because he's probably bowled them overs in 7 different spells. He's probably bowled 15 overs in 6 spells, 1 over here, 1 over there, and then that accumulates into stats and data. So you've got to either back someone and back them properly with action, get them into the game, get them the overs, and then reap the rewards. Or, you pick someone, if you just want to be defensive and someone that's going to keep an entire, you go and pick that. Your second point is absolutely bang on. They have this picture in their head of what a spinner should be, right? And they want to turn every spinner into that. And every spinner is different. Everyone has different, strengths to them. Someone bowls naturally slow. Someone bowls naturally quick. Matt Parkinson is a great example of what you've just described for me. Matt Parkinson was never going to be a spinner that was going to bowl quick, right? But he was a spinner that had, grooved his skill, bowled slower, but his biggest skill was his leg spinner, got 9 stripped and spun away, right? What they tried to do, and it was evidently clear, they tried to change his action to try and get him to bowl quicker, because everyone had it in his head, he can't succeed at international level unless he bowls quick. The thing is, with him bowling quick, he lost his length and lost his spin, so lost his absolute, his sort of things that were really stood him out in county cricket. And this seems to happen so much. And you've got a spin bowling coach who's been there now 2-3 years, And I personally, from afar, don't see improvement in any of the spinners. I don't. And where they go with Rehan it's going to be an interesting one for his career. It's something he needs to do. Because I spoke to people, close to him, and he is someone that can clearly bat. But he's got caught up in all this, this stuff, and he's batting like a slugger at times. Let's be really honest. And he's better than that. But if you look at his stats, just like you've repeated his stats, you'll go repeat his stats. You'll be like, oh my God, is he actually getting better? So he needs to sit down. I remember Terry Jenner talked about a conversation he had with Shane Warne, where he sat him down and said, what do you want to be? What is it that you want out of your career? And what are you prepared to sacrifice for that? And I think I would very much encourage the spinners to have their own mentors. To very much this is something that's happened in Australian cricket for a long time, and I think we're at that stage in cricket as a whole. Outside of the team, have your own sort of team, and really someone you can always go back to, someone you can build and improve with. Because the reality is, a spin bowling coach in the team, you're not going to be fully open with them because they're going to have eyes in selection and stuff like that. Build someone that's able to tell you honestly, because tell them honestly where they actually are and what they need.
Batters seem to do that more than bowlers, Azeem, because Rooty used to phone up Kevin Sharp. Alistair Cook had a bit of mentoring Graham Gooch, but you don't hear bowlers talking about it, do you?
No, and that's my point. And I think that needs, especially with spinners, because the reality is the structure is not going to help them, right? I'm not saying the structure is the reason for their lack of growth, but the structure is not going to help them. So they've got to decide their own structure. They've got to decide what they do outside of that structure that's going to help them become a Nathan Lyon, become an Ashwin. What is it in their spare time, in their game, they're going to do? And some of them are going to have to make some decisions. They're going to have to go and have some conversations with their counties, because time flies. Before you know it, you go from being 19 to 25, being an up and coming, where you get praised for 3 good balls, 3 bad balls, to you get absolutely criticized for 3 bad balls. That changes very quickly, and it's something that needs to happen. But I don't know where it's going to happen in this this environment, because anyone listening, they'll think, oh well, no, I've got this. I'm going to stick with this. Time flies quickly, and the cricket structure in England is not going to help them.
That reminds me of what Jose Mourinho said in there was a Spurs documentary, and he had Dele Alli in front of him, and he basically said to Dele Alli, "I was your age once. He said something like, I was your age yesterday, and now I'm 55." And it goes like that. So you've got to basically make the right decisions. You've got to do what's best for you, and you've got to make sure you get the most out of your career, because it'll be gone in a flash. And that'll be the same for Rian Ahmed and for Shoaib Bashir, unless they make the right decision. Because Rian Ahmed, leg spinner in Australia, if we're talking about the Ashes again, if they could get him to reach his potential, he can bat, like you say, and he can also be, as we've seen in this third Test match, can also be a decent bowler. Lucas, with England's spinners, and indeed with all of the aspects of a team, a lot of people have said to me over the last few days, why don't England send spinners to Australia, send spinners to Sri Lanka, send people to different countries? Because Australia, in your off season, you've got England to send your players to. Yeah. If Nathan Lyon fancies getting a few overs in, he can come and play for Lancashire for 8 games. If Labuschagne wants to get some runs under his belt, comes to play for Glamorgan. England don't seem to send anybody abroad. They kind of keep them in the England bubble, take them to Loughborough and look after them themselves. Whereas I think a young spinner being sent off to Sri Lanka, making his own way, maybe growing up a little bit as a person and kind of learning different conditions, can only help them down the line.
Just before Lucas comes in, James, they do that. They actually, England have probably got the resources to be able to do that, and they do that. They do send players. They just don't get to go and play first class cricket, because not every country is as accommodating as we are in county cricket. We're like, come and help, and we'll help you get better for when you play against us. But
it's that level they need, though, isn't it? It's that level they need. They need to be playing first class cricket in those countries. And if the ECB say, look, you've got Rian Ahmed for a season, and he's going to be yours. You can coach him. If he doesn't play well for you, you can have quite rightly not pick him. But we'll pay his way. We'll pay his wages, and we'll pay his accommodation. It's going to cost you nothing. But you can get him some overs in those conditions under his belt at that level. That's surely good.
That has been tried, and it has been. Make sure we don't sort of criticize where, because they have done that. They've done it sent Sri Lanka in the past, and etc. So the problem is now is the T20 franchise leagues. The players ain't going to want to go. The players don't want to play Lions cricket now because they can, and you'll see over the next few weeks, a lot of my understanding is a lot of players have signed contracts in county cricket that might just be white ball contracts, so they can go and play these franchise leagues. So the changing dynamics, and this is why the onus needs to go on the player. What do you want to achieve? Go on, Lucas. Sorry.
Those are good points. Mason Crane was a perfect example. He played in Sydney grade competition. He played a Sheffield Shield game. He actually got picked for the Ashes in that Australian series a couple of years ago. So there's also perception of it that Australia, the Sheffield Shield, does not allow foreign players to come play in the competition. That's a load of garbage. That is total garbage. Now, a good friend of mine, Azeem may or may not know who he is. Ethan Bamber is a good friend of mine, really good friend of mine. He takes wickets for fun in the Grade 1 competition. He doesn't play for my club anymore. He's moved. He took wickets for fun. The state team said, "Oh, we'll look at you." Just like me, they said, "You're not fast enough." I was a young bowler as well.
Did he move clubs because the keeper couldn't catch?
He didn't have to put up with me at that time, James. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. But when Azeem makes a good point. Bowling coaches don't seem to have the patience. Now, when I was playing in the grade comp 10 years ago, I was taking 30 wickets in a competition, an average of something like 20, 21. I played a second 11 state game, and I got feedback from, I don't want to name the coach because it sounded like I have some problem with him. He told me that I was too slow. And then I actually quit the sport, and that's how I became a keeper, because I didn't mentally want to deal with it anymore. I thought my dreams were being crushed, and I've turned to keeping. Now, I coached under 14s last year, and I see a lot of bowlers, especially fast bowlers, when they took their wrist, they think they need to slam their wrist on the ground and literally break it. And I tell them, you don't need to do that. You just have to guide it. Just guide the ball to get maximum swing, get your seam, get however you want it, upright seam movement. So I don't think bowling coaches compared to batting coaches have the patience for some weird reason. Now, I think England with these three, so I'll leave out Jack Leach because he's a bit older, but definitely with Rehan and Bashir, you can see they've got a lot of potential, but it seems to me no one wants to deal with them because, as Azeem said, they bowl 2 bad balls while you're out of the attack. I'll ask this to Azeem, how many spin bowlers in the world, or you can ask this, James, how many spin bowlers in the world play every single game? I can only think of 2. I can only think of Nathan Lyon and Maharaj from South Africa.
Just before you answer that, Azeem, because I was going to ask you this question, you can kind of combine the two answers. With Archie Vaughan coming through at Somerset and Jack Leach being the number 1 spinner there, Shoaib Bashir's not going to play for Somerset, really, is he? He's going to potentially have to find another club. Rian Ahmed's not necessarily bowling every game for Leicestershire. He's going to potentially have to find another club. People always want good quality spinners, but you've got to make sure you're doing what's right for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky. That's why I said they're going to have some conversations, some difficult conversations with their county. And, it's not just playing. It's when you're playing, what role are you playing within that team? You look at Simon Harmer, for example, every time you play against Essex, sort of 15, 16 over, Simon Harmer's going to come in, whether it's in April and May, or September, October, and he's going to come in and he's just going to bowl from that end, and he's going to bowl all day. And because of that, he's going to build up rhythm. When he gets in real good rhythm, he gets the pitches, the conditions, he's going to get 5-6 fours, and that's how he's going to get wickets. That's how he's going to impact the game. That's how he's going to so the attack is built around him. So Bashir and Rehan are going to have to go and have them conversation, because, as I said, time will go quite quickly. What role? And they're going to have to pick the right place for themselves, but also, the wider away from the structure. As I said, the structure is not going to help them become world class. And, the point that Lucas makes of Lyon and Maharaj, knowing you're going to play, coming to the ground, knowing you're going to play and what part you're going to play is so big for a spinner, so big that I can't emphasize it enough. Your role with actions in the team. That's an important conversation that these guys are going to have, and not just think, subcontinent 2027, because that will be upon us. And if they're not careful, they're not going to be in the team. They're not going to be in the squad, because it doesn't matter what Jeetan Patel says in a press interview right now. If Bashir doesn't have the summer and struggles, then suddenly the pressure is going to be on, to pick someone else. So they're going to have to find, a county where they're going to play a big role and they're going to get the opportunity to grow. At the same time, they're going to have to find other ways themselves to keep adding and keep getting better. And in Rehan's case, I would urge him to knuckle down as a batsman and, aim to average over 40 in the county championship. That he should be setting out to get 800 to 1,000 runs. Do that, and watch how his whole game. And to him, I thought he bowled really well. Yeah. I thought he bowled really well. I actually thought Stokes captained him poorly. I don't think Stokes used him anywhere near well enough. Actually, both captains didn't use the leg spinner well enough. They didn't use the third spinner well enough. So, a lot of question marks and challenges ahead for them. But look, the advantage both of them have got is they're young. They've had a taste of international cricket young. They are clearly getting the support and backing. And it's on them now to really try and, achieve whatever they want to achieve in their life. And, whatever that is, they need to sit down, work out, map it out, and sort of go with it.
To round off the Pakistan, Australia, England chat, the two people I thought came out with credit from this final test. Jamie Smith, I thought, batted really sensibly to start with, then opened his shoulders a bit further down, and seems to have got the temperament for Test cricket. He came out and showed people with far more experience than him how it should be done when he first came in. Didn't look flustered. He just kind of stares the opposition in the face, doesn't look flustered, and seems to be a real find for me. And Rian, as you say, I thought when he came on, that little spell where he took 3 wickets, at the time I felt was going to change the test. I thought that was going to really swing it on its head because Pakistan had taken control of the day. All of a sudden, towards the end of that session, he comes on, tilts it on its head, and then obviously in the afternoon and beyond, Pakistan kind of wrestled it back from England. But I think, and it's always nice to see the family involved, and his dad on the balcony smiling after every wicket. Always good to see that, because families are so important. Any cricketer that comes through, their family play a huge part, and to see his dad celebrating on the balcony was really good. To finish off today's broadcast, though, let's just have one word. Or a very quick chat about another remarkable performance that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, which is New Zealand. The Kiwis have won in Australia. Finishing off today, Santner was the spinner that spanned New Zealand.
In Australia, they haven't played Australia, James. You mean India? Not Australia.
In India, yeah. Sorry, I got Australia losing on my mind. In India. First team since England in 2012 to go to India and win a test series. And there's only a handful, I think 3 matches that are in the interim that India have actually lost. They've won series convincingly. And New Zealand, 2-0 up in a 3-match series, can't be overtaken. And it's been a tremendous performance from the Kiwis in India to go somewhere which everybody seems to think it's impossible to win, with a slightly depleted squad as well, and to come away with a guaranteed series victory, Lucas, it's just remarkable.
It came from nowhere, absolutely nowhere. Now I know maybe India have been they've been their own worst enemy here, because I know the Australians have came out more or less said we want green top pitches against these guys, and all of a sudden India producing friendly seam conditions for some reason. This test was not a friendly seam condition. This test was a ranked turner, and India capitulated badly. I thought Sentner was fantastic in this test match. He really did a lot of damage. Conway, surprisingly, coming into this series was on the verge of being dropped. Couldn't make a run. He's been fantastic this series. Should have made 100. I know I've debated on that with the keeping, the blunder with the keeper on that. But I thought Conway was very impressive. Will Young has been very impressive. And for some reason, Jadeja, Ashwin have not been impressive. Kohli and Sharma, they've been horrendous. Now, I don't want to... We saw what happened with Pakistan. You can call it brutal. Dropping of Shaheen Afridi and Babar Azam. If I'm India, I'm looking at Kohli and looking at Sharma. You haven't made runs for a long time. Now, I know Kohli made runs in the last test. He made that 40-50. But apart from that, they haven't made runs for a long time. I think Sharma's last 100 was against Australia a couple of years ago in the first test. So that's a long time without runs. Maybe India need to be brutal themselves and say, okay, we've got Australia coming up. We've been successful there 2 years in a row. Can we really take these players into this environment on green tops? Because if they do poorly, they might retire at the end of the season. You might see the end of Kohli. You might see the end of Shemi. So that's a real concern. Is there top order and middle order?
Washington Sundar came in and out-bowled Ashwin and Jadeja, didn't he, with a spin? He took 10 for... And Santner's taken an absolute bundle of wickets, Azeem. And we talked about Jack Leach. I mean, I've always thought of Mitchell Santner, obviously unfairly, as being a one-day spinner who kind of spears it in and gets nice tidy figures. But he's come to town in this series against India. Yeah,
New Zealand have done what New Zealand do, right? They're underdogs all the time. They're, not a lot of it expected of them. They turn up, they punch above their weight. They put in performances. I think, look, with the IPL and a lot of their players playing so much cricket in India, this is not conditions that they're not used to. I think Ravindra, Devon Conway, Santner, and the first test as the seam bowlers. They've all sort of chipped in, and India have been off the boil. The reality is, have they got their eyes already onto the Australia? Possibly. Have they taken their eye off the mark? Possibly. But New Zealand have outplayed them across 2 test matches. I don't think there's anything for India to panic, personally. It's not the same as Pakistan. In that Pakistan, there was a lot going on, and there's a lot. But the one thing to keep an eye on, potentially, and is this the effect of Gautam Gambhir? Because he was a controversial choice. He is someone that wears his heart on his sleeve, and there was always a question mark whether this will work, knowing full well that some of the senior players don't like him. And yes, I think that's going to be an interesting, because if this develops into something a bit more than just eye off the ball, looking ahead to Australia, then there could be a lot happening in Indian cricket with that. In terms of the 2 senior batters, they're at the back end of their careers anyway. I think there's a changing of guard. They've got some incredible young talent coming through. Good bowlers. Interesting from a spin bowling point of view, but I think Jadeja and Ashwin still got a lot to give. So I don't think there's masses to panic about, but I think for me, I'd rather give the credit here to New Zealand, who have done exactly, and like you say, it is nigh on impossible to go and win a test series in India, and to go and do that and do it, when not really. You compare you compare India's population to New Zealand, the cricket infrastructure, everything. It's David against life, and good on them. But a lot more cricket to come.
Just one city.
I'll tell you what, James. They've got
small city in India is the size of New Zealand. Basically, that kind of sums it up. I think Mumbai's population is massively more than New Zealand in its entirety. It's crazy. Sorry, Lucas.
Yeah. Well, just on that, New Zealand, cricket's not the number 1 sport. Rugby union is. So it's not even their number 1 sport. Where Australia, different sports and different codes. But summer is Australia's number 1 sport in the summer. Cricket, is the number 1 summer sport in Australia. But I think New Zealand have a special bowler in Rillo Walk. I've seen him in this Test series. He's been very, very impressive for me. With a high pace, he's heavy, or he's a skiddy bowler, has troubled the batsmen on these pitches. So I think he's a very special player. One definitely for the future to watch. For me,
they've always punched above their weight, New Zealand, and you're always thinking, well, this generation's finishing. There's going to be nobody coming through. But then they unleash Rachin Ravindra, who's an absolute quality. You mentioned O'Rourke as well. There's always seem to have next comes off the rank, and it's always good to see. So congratulations, New Zealand. Fantastic to be 2-0 up. Whatever happens in the third test, and they're going to come back with a series win and absolutely bang on right. And we've gone through this podcast without even mentioning Ollie Pope at number 3 for England. Probably the only podcast that reviews Pakistan or England's without mentioning Ollie Pope's position at number 3. But we will maybe chat about him another day.
He can play in the Ashes, James. Send him to the Ashes. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. I mean, just very quickly, he's not a number 3, is he?
No.
He's not a number 3.
I'd swap him and Brook around. I think Brook is in the comfy, easy spot. I've been saying this for. I've always felt that Ollie Pope's not a number 3 because of just the frantic nature of the way he bats. He's a busy player that needs to be at 5, 6, and I think he'll score a lot of runs there.
Things if they drop him, and there's a lot of people saying he's rubbish, and he's not rubbish. He's a very good player. And if they drop him and he goes off and plays for Surrey, he'll average about 85, and there'll be clamours for him to come back in again. So you've got to find a place for him, but it's where it is, and it's certainly not number 3 for me. Azeem, just very quickly to finish with, I've said for ages with Ollie Pope, why doesn't he buy Ian Bell, buy Alistair Cook a coffee, go and sit down with them for 2 hours and say, how did you approach your innings when from the minute you realised you were in? When that first wicket fell and you got your gloves on and you walked down the steps and you walked out there, what was going through your head? How did you settle yourself down? What were you thinking about? What were your initial targets with your innings? How did you settle yourself down? Because it is those first 20, 30 balls that you just can't seem to cope with.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he has. Maybe he has done that. It's been, it's over 50 test matches now. So there's fundamentally something, that is stopping him being relaxed. And if he hasn't, then that raises a question of again, does this England team have the ability to step away from that bubble and go, what do I need to do to get better, as opposed to just being in that bubble and just everything's fine and we're great.
Because there's so many people, Lucas, around international cricket teams, not just in the coaching staff, but the commentators, the people that they meet around the world as they go on their travels. It doesn't take too much, does it, to say Jonathan Trott, for example. He's a great example of somebody that probably the only person in recent history that's made a number 3 position his own for England. Trotty, spare me 20 minutes. I just want to talk to you about your processes and stuff. That's all about learning and getting yourself better, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There's no problem with asking former players for advice. Happens all the time in Australia. So I think it's probably down to arrogance, maybe, that they think, oh well, look, I'll just play out of form. I'll find a way out of it, and you really don't. Personally, for Ollie Pope, he can play another 12 months. That's good enough for me. He can go again. I've got nothing bad to say about Ollie Pope's batting. Persist with it for another 12 months, and then after that, then you can do what the hell you want with him. So stick with him, and see how he goes.
By the time he has another 12 months at number 5 or 6 in the order, he'll be knocking double unders in Adelaide against you. So, you just be careful what you wish for, Lucas. Anyway,
actually,
the end of the podcast. We can't go on any longer. We've been going on for an hour and 18 minutes. I mean, basically, I've not been able to shut either of you two up, and it's been all the better for it. It's been good to see you, Lucas, and thank you for your appearances on the pod through Pakistan against England. It's been a pleasure, and it's a pleasure to see you again, Azeem, and get you on the pod again. And good to hear your views, and thank you for that. And thank you out there. Well, finally, congratulations, Pakistan. Congratulations, New Zealand. Fantastic performances from both squads over the last couple of weeks, and well-deserved success. However, you are out there in the world, whichever team you're supporting, whether you're a Pakistan Badger or an England Badger, commiserations to one set. Congratulations to the other set. Azeem and Lucas, thank you. And we will see you again very soon indeed on the Cricket Badger podcast. Take care of yourselves out there, everybody, and enjoy the cricket that's to come. Third test of I'll be able to watch that properly, the third test between India and New Zealand, because I've been watching the England one really, so I've not paid too much attention, but I'll be watching that soon, and we'll see you again soon.